Hello everyone, and you're very welcome along to the Racing News 365 Formula 1 podcast, the first one in a couple of weeks after the summer break. And I'm Thomas Maher. I'm joined by Dieter Rencken, Formula 1 journalist, fresh from his travels to Spa-Francorchamps. But I'm also joined by Mike Seymour. Mike is a new addition to the Racing News 365 podcast team, and he's also the editor of RacingNews365.com. You're very welcome along, Mike.
Thank you very much, Thomas. Very nice to be here.
You've had a pretty interesting first weekend as part of the Racing News 365 podcast team. Mike, it was a pretty unusual set of events that we witnessed over the weekend. What was your take on the situation?
Yeah, indeed. So a couple of seasons out of Formula 1. Very much looking forward to getting back to it and, joining the team during the summer break and building up to the Belgian Grand Prix, what we thought was going to be the continuation of Max versus Lewis, hoping for another on-track battle. Unfortunately, obviously didn't play out that way. Very difficult situation for officials on Sunday. Terrible conditions, obviously. As Lewis touched on in his social media posts, there is highly sophisticated technology in place in terms of weather forecasts, and I think moving forward it's going to be quite an interesting talking point. What do we do in similar situations in the future? Not a nice situation with fans standing around for hours in the rain. The paddock wondering what's going on. Is there going to be a race? Are we going to get any action underway? Not a great day in terms of us, wanting to watch an exciting Grand Prix. And let's just hope next time out in Zandvoort it's a smooth one and we go racing. Very
much so. And Dieter, I want to ask, what was your overwhelming impression of the weekend in Belgium?
My overwhelming impression in Belgium was actually, Thomas, it started basically on Friday. We knew on Friday that the weather forecast was for wet. There are absolutely no doubts about that whatsoever. People can talk about, windows of 10 minutes or whatever, but fundamentally, when you have a 2-hour race and you look at the weather forecast, you know that 90% of those 2 hours are actually going to be wet. So Formula One had a lot of opportunity of preparing for it. But I believe that the entire situation goes far deeper than just this particular weekend. And I'd like to relate very briefly a conversation I had with Bernie Eccleston, the previous Formula One CEO, and obviously the so-called founder of Formula One, if I could call that, certainly modern-day Formula One, in 2009 after the Malaysian Grand Prix. And I'd written a piece which was pretty scathing about the fact that Formula One had chosen to start at 4 o'clock in Malaysia. They did that to try and catch audiences across the world. Well, it backfired spectacularly because after an hour we had massive rain, a massive storm. They then had to red flag the race, and then we ran out of daylight for them to continue. So even after it had become dry, we'd run out of daylight, and therefore the race stayed red flagged. And in fact, significantly, it's the last red flagged race that we've had for weather, which was stopped completely before yesterday. Now, when we look at this, Formula One has moved start times from 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock. They've also reduced the overall time for a Grand Prix from 4 hours to 3 hours because somebody suddenly woke up for this year and said, hey, whoa, if we're going to have a 3 o'clock start time, we can't have a 4-hour run window for a Grand Prix. Therefore, we've got to reduce that to 3 hours as well, which is why they had to stop the clock yesterday. Otherwise, it would have run out of time. Now, basically what Formula One should do is revert back to a 2-hour start. Not only is it more convenient for most people, it also enables fans to leave after a race and still get home without having to spend another night. They can get to airports and catch flights and whatever. But crucially, it would give us that additional hour that we may need to resume a race or start it or whatever the situation may be. And I believe that is where it started. Secondly, we should be looking at a far more flexible daytime schedule. We should be saying we have from 10 o'clock in the morning until 6 o'clock at night. Now let us see where can we put 2 hours worth of Formula 1 into that. We can run Formula 3, we can run Super Cup, we can run Formula 2, whatever other categories there are. We can run those around those if there is time. But fans didn't pay $400 yesterday to see Formula 3. You can see that for $20 at Brands Hatch. They paid $400 to see Max versus Lewis, and that is what they were denied. I heard team principals say that, they saw a Porsche Super Cup race. Oh, they saw a Formula 3 race. Oh, they saw a W Series race. Big deal. That's not what you pay $400 for. And that, to me, is a crucial point.
Well, this is where I'm reluctant to use the word farce because, this was a situation brought about by the weather. And the weather is something that, it's in the hands of the gods, so to speak. There's nothing that the likes of race control can do. Michael Massey can't do anything about it. But it was the ongoing regulations and the lack of transparency between race control and the teams and the resulting confusion that led to the situation becoming somewhat farcical. Somewhere over the course of the winter, the sporting regulations were changed to reduce the window from, as you say, from 4 hours to 3 hours. Dieter, a 3-hour window to get a 2-hour race in is simply just not enough time.
Of course not, but that's the whole point. But they've had to do that because they've changed start times to 3 o'clock. So we have to go back earlier, preferably even 1 o'clock. Let's not forget that the more races we have on the calendar, the less choice you have about when to actually stage the races. I had a look yesterday at the history of the region, the area, in terms of rainfall per month. August is one of the highest rainfall months there is. April is one of the lowest. So let us be clever about this and say, we're going to put Spa into April. We don't want to lose Spa as a circuit. It's majestic, it's magic, it's everything. We don't want to lose it. So how do we retain it? By running the race in April. That way we have a 50% better chance of not having the race flooded out as it was yesterday. And sure, there'll be the odd April weekend with rain or the April day with rain or whatever the case may be. But it's not going to be the same as we've had. We've had, out of the last 14 years, 9 Spa weekends have had deluges. Now, we got lucky 8 times, but very, very got caught badly the 9th time.
Mike, did you feel a little bit sorry for race control yesterday, given that they seem to be kind of, backed into a corner somewhat?
On the one hand, yes. As I touched on at the start, a very difficult situation on the day, in the moment. Relentless rain, a window that didn't look like it was going to open. But I think, moving forward, if we could have a bit more flexibility and, potentially look at running a race on a Sunday morning, if the weather from midday onwards is looking like it's going to be set in hard rain and there's not going to be a window to run a Grand Prix. So I think having that flexibility, and just being a bit more proactive than reactive, obviously easy to say in hindsight, but the rain was there and wasn't going to let up, and many of us saw a race actually going ahead and 2 laps behind a safety car just to tick off the race officially, get a classification, award half points and move on. As a fan at the track especially, you would feel a bit cheated by that.